This episode of On the Bookshelf, featuring playwright Ralph Tufo, is sponsored by the Winthrop Book Depot and Cafe, located at 11 Somerset Avenue in Winthrop, Massachusetts. Welcome to this edition of On the Bookshelf. I'm Pete Solomon. Playwright Ralph Tufo is a very busy man. He's already written 3 plays, musicals that have been performed, and he's working on 2 more. He's our guest and you'll meet him, but first, let's take a look at the finale of his 2018 play, I'd Rather Be Lucky Than Good.
I'd rather be lucky than good. I'll let fate do what it should. No stress, no worry, no pain. I'll let luck take over the reins. I got a fishbone in my pocket, a silver dollar locket, a shamrock tattoo, a rabbit's foot too. Yes, I do. My mojo charm won't do me no harm. Being lucky is what I should. I'd rather be lucky than good. Yes, I would. Be lucky than good. Yes, I would. Be
That's the finale from the musical I'd Rather Be Lucky Than Good, written and produced by our guest, Ralph Tufo. Ralph, thanks for joining us on the Bookshelf.
Always good to see you, Pete.
Thank you. Now, you've written and produced Wrong Place, Right Time, Katrina Roadhouse. We just saw a bit of I'd Rather Be Lucky Than Good, and now you have 2 projects cooking. That's pretty full plate.
Well, they just decide to come out when they decide to come out, I guess.
Before we talk about them, if you don't mind, let's back up a little bit.
Yeah.
It all started for you musically in Lynn, your ancestral home.
Right.
With an accordion when you were 5 years old. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, accordion playing was in my family. My grandfather came from Italy. He played. My cousin took lessons, my older cousin, and my older brother took lessons. And on Saturdays, we would sit around at night and watch the Lawrence Welk show. For those of you who might remember that show, and Myron Florin. And so I guess this is what I was told by my parents, is that when he came on, I was doing this. So they said, I guess they said, get that boy some accordion lessons. And so, yeah, I took lessons when I started when I was 5.
And later singing lessons. Music was a big part of your life.
I take singing lessons. I've been doing that for, well, about 12 years every week. Yeah. Need all the help I can get.
So music has always been a big part of your life, but the written word has as well. You have a background as a teacher from the middle school level to the college level. You were a department head at North Shore Community College. I know, because I know you a little bit, that one of your big musical influences was Clifton Chenier, known as the Zydeco King.
Right.
But who were your literary influences?
Well, that's a good question. In terms of short stories, at one point I was really into short stories, still into some extent, Steinbeck, Hemingway, and then in terms of plays, Shakespeare, I guess, though nothing I've written comes very close to that.
Not yet.
O'Neill, you know. So I read a lot of different things in college. I was in a couple of plays in college. I did a little bit of acting. One play was called You Know I Can't Hear You When the Water's Running, a comedy about a couple who had been both of them been married like 4 or 5 times, and they were now approaching senility, and they couldn't remember details about each marriage, so they were getting confused. Like, remember the time we were in Cleveland? And I was never in Cleveland. You know, it was that kind of comedy. So I wrote a lot of poetry in college, mostly. I wrote a couple of plays, but very short. And so creative writing has always been a part of me, mostly songs and poems, a few short stories. But then I started to get into plays probably, well, back in, really after I went to New Orleans after Katrina. That's when I met people there, and they were telling me their stories about survival after Katrina, and I decided, well, boy, you don't hear these personal stories on the news. So that's what gave me the impetus to write a play. And since I play Cajun Zydeco music, I used that as a background, and that kind of got me going. Oh, I'd say like back, really didn't start the serious aspect of playwriting until like around, like 2006.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Let's back up for just a second.
Yeah.
What was your first ambition as you were growing up and getting involved in various things? Did you daydream about being an actor or a musician?
Really, I thought about what I was a teacher.
Interesting.
When I was a kid, I wasn't thinking, I mean, I always played music, but I never really thought about doing it like professionally. Jam sessions and that type of thing, but teaching was what I wanted to do. And I did that, but I also kept my music alive as well. And now that I'm a retired college professor, now I'm really focusing on the music and the playwriting. So,
well, let's expound upon your
Yeah.
music for just a minute.
Yeah.
You've written over 50 songs.
Right.
What's the difference between writing song lyrics and poetry?
Well, poetry doesn't always have to rhyme, number one. I think you have more leeway with poetry in terms of just moving. Some of the poetry can be visual, like E. Cummings.
Sure.
Right. But with a song, you're pretty locked into like a blues, like a chord structure and number of bars and chorus, verse. It's more regimented. Where with poetry, there's much more freedom, I think, to choose from topics and as well as your structure.
When you're sitting down with a pen and pad or with in front of your computer and you're writing song lyrics, are you hearing music in your head?
That's always a good question. I usually don't write the lyrics without some music in my head. And I kind of, like say, what do you write first? The lyrics or the song? Well, I have a tendency to write them both at the same time because they seem to come out that way. And it can be just one line,
Sure.
a line from a chorus, and start there. Then you kind of build on something. You get a little gem of an idea, and you build on it. And I'm notorious rewriter. Takes me forever to write a song. Plays take me a year or two because I constantly go back, and it can always be better. And you hear something from somebody, say, I think I'm going to change that. Yeah. So I just kind of keep my eyes and ears open for new ideas when things come around. And then I decide, you know what, I think I'd like to explore that. So once you get to that point, you get a little bit of a starting point, then, like I say, you build on it.
You talk about ideas. Now, the Katrina Roadhouse was very well received. People still talk about that. And your play from 2018, I'd Rather Be Lucky Than Good, any of us who've ever swung a golf club in earnest has seen people like the characters in the play,
Right.
but the play has a great strength to it. And in all of the plays that you've written that I'm familiar with, and the only one that I'm not is Wrong Place, Right Time, your plays are very character driven. And so let's fill in the blanks. We talked about you becoming inspired to write Katrina Roadhouse from your own visits to New Orleans after Katrina. You were inspired to write I'd Rather Be Lucky Than Good because a little late in life you became a golfer.
Right.
And as I said a minute ago, we see the characters that are depicted in your play on public golf courses everywhere.
You know, what's ironic too, is that I took little pieces of the character of some of my friends, and they're sitting in the audience and they're chuckling, and they know that this activity or this line is really them, you know, so which kind of makes it funny, I guess.
Now you're working on a project called Drama Behind the Drama.
Right.
And you were influenced and inspired by something that happened when I'd Rather Be Lucky Than Good debuted, weren't you?
Right. What happened on the first night, during one of the scenes, not even during intermission, there was an argument that broke out between some of the actors over turf, where they were putting their props. And this is like between scenes. No, I didn't know about it because I was playing the music, but the director knew about it, and she told me about it. And so we had a little quote-unquote pep talk next night. Everything got resolved and so forth. But that gave me the idea about this play, the drama behind the drama, what goes on behind the stage. And I changed it around a little bit, and I have two young an actor and an actress who can't stand each other, yet they have to work together on this musical comedy. So it's all about what happens during intermission. So I kind of got the idea. I changed it around a little bit, but kind of got the idea of, like, what do you do if you're in a play and you have to work closely with someone, they're your opposite, your lead, and you can't stand them? And how does that get resolved? So that's what this play is about.
So the drama behind the drama is Alice and Nelson, the two actors, and the battle they have on opening night.
Right.
But there's a little chemistry ultimately there, isn't there?
Yes, there is. That's kind of below the surface. For Alice, it's kind of below the surface. For Nelson, it's right out front. I mean, he's inappropriate during the love scenes. I'll leave it at that. Okay. And she does not like that. You know, so that's the first bone of contention. And then they're arguing over, you know, who's singing louder than the other person, about blocking. You're familiar with in acting, you're not supposed to, you know, have your back to the audience. Well, they're both like covering each other, you know, and they're going at each other until Frank, the stage manager, comes in, who's a veteran, and provides them with a little bit of insight and advice. So there's a lot to be learned. They're rookies. There's a lot to be learned, but it says a lot about what it takes to be an actor or an artist, what sacrifices you have to make, what your worries are, what your fears are, how things actually can be successful, and how there's a community of people that are working to help you out no matter how old you are, you know. So there's a lot going on. It's only 10 minutes, but I believe a lot goes on in that 10 minutes.
Indeed, yes. We should note that this whole play takes place in a community theater.
Right.
It would be fair to say this is sort of an insight into what goes on in the minor leagues of acting?
I would say so. I've never been to the big league, so I can only speak for the minor league. But yes, behind the scenes, and I think it's probably not that different. I would venture a guess for like big dramatic shows that people are going to have to learn how to work together.
I'm guessing on Broadway the egos are bigger.
Oh yes, and sometimes the egos get in the way.
Now, in addition to this, you're working on another project, Beyond the Blues.
Yes.
And this takes place in a bar, the Urban Legend Bar. It's around 1982.
Right.
In your home of Lynn. Is this based on a real bar?
No.
So your old neighbors wouldn't say, I used to go to that place?
No, but there were bars right around that area that escaped Lynn's urban renewal, or the fires that were set in that whole area. I'm picturing one of the bars, but it's not the exact bar.
Sure.
It's a blues bar where this is the last night of a blues singer-songwriter competition.
Mm-hmm.
And these 4 characters each sing 3 songs. They're all originals by me. They're all blues.
Mm-hmm.
And they provide a monologue to go along with each song. Like,
It's a 50-minute performance?
yes. No. 2 acts.
Oh, okay.
There's like 12 songs.
Mm-hmm.
There's 2 acts.
Yeah.
And each character talks about how they wrote the song, why they wrote the song, what is the blues, what does the blues mean to me. So it kind of going beyond the blues.
Okay.
So the audience gets to hear the narrative, here's the song, and then at the end of the night, the audience votes on who they believe would be the winner.
Mm-hmm.
So you could have a different winner each night.
Sure. To add a little texture to this, Ralph, can we go over the players one by one now? Anthony's the MC. He holds it all together, right?
Yep.
And then we have Shakira. Tell
Yep.
us about her.
Okay. She grew up in America Park Housing Project. America Park, where it's not safe to go out after dark. I worked in a community schools recreation program right outside of America Park. Back then, in the late 70s and 80s, it was a very dangerous place at night. Police were sometimes afraid to go there. A lot of Hells Angels with, very dangerous dogs and so forth. So she comes from, her father was black, she was white. She grew up in this America Park, and she was constantly picked on. And ran into problems there, ran into problems in school. Yet she came up with this song, I'm not running from this. If I run from this, I'll be running the rest of my life. And so that's one of her songs. So, and one of her teachers heard that she could sing, turned her life around, got her involved in church singing. And now she sings with the church, sings gospel, and also sings at night in different, with a band and open mics. So her life got turned around mainly by the help of a teacher.
Now there's Jack.
Right.
Tell
Yes.
us a little bit about him.
Okay, Jack was a war vet, came back, and his life kind of fell apart. Kind of went on the skids. Later on, after so many years, he got his life together again. But during that period of time, he lived in some rooming houses in Lynn. And one of the rooming houses, fictional, it was a true story about, in one of the rooming houses in Lynn during that period of time, there was a fire, 4 people died. They believed it was arson. They believed that one of the exits was nailed shut. And so he sings this song, The Brickyard Blues, and it's about arson in Lynn. And then he also does a narrative about what is the blues, and he talks about the history of the blues and what it means to him. So he's got a couple of other songs that they're all got 3 songs.
Sure. Then we have Mary.
Right. Who is a person who has not had an easy life. Growing up in Lynn, she's the mother of 3 children. Her husband has some issues with drinking, but yet she sings, I won't give up on you. And she talks about, love should have no regrets. So she's still dealing with the issues, but yet she's willing to share this. One of the things about this play, and the MC will make this clear, that the people are willing to share their personal lives, their personal stories, why they wrote this. And, she's sort of like a survivor.
Sure.
Yeah.
And the 4th contestant is Albie.
Right. Now he's sort of like a little bit of the comic character. I had to throw some comedy in there. It's a little bit too serious.
Sure.
Because not all blues is like B.B. King has some happy blues, you know, so some of that. And he spent some time down in New Orleans. So this is my connection with some of the Delta blues. And he tells a story about one of his friends who became totally enraptured with a New Orleans pole dancer on Bourbon Street. So he sings the song Miss Bon Vivant. It's all about her. And he sings a song about his girlfriend. It's still down in New Orleans, down on the Delta. And then also he sings that I've got nothing but the blues. It's just sort of like a B.B. King. When everything else goes away, the blues will always be there for you.
When this play is mounted, will the people in the audience wonder and speculate who's going to win the contest?
They're not going to know because the actual audience votes.
Really?
Yeah. No one knows who's going to win.
Interesting. So if you do it on 3 consecutive nights, you may have 3 consecutive winners.
Exactly. And that's the sort of like, you got to have it, you know, and then the MC has to be able to, you know, have an ending for each particular. What happens at the end, they do a song together and the votes are being tallied while the last song is being played.
Oh, interesting.
So the results come out and then someone comes off stage, hands him the results, and then, you know, there's the grand finale and they announce who the winner is. But no one knows who the winner is because the audience decides that each night.
That could make the actors you cast very competitive, won't it?
Exactly. They're probably keeping score, right? So I have to also make sure that I'm dividing the songs, you know, like, well, it's hard to say which ones are better than others, but trying to make sure that all of the songs are great and all of their monologues are great. So I don't want to stack the deck for somebody.
You know, we talked for a brief minute earlier in the conversation about how your plays are so character-driven, and your characters are so nuanced. How hard is it to cast?
It's hard. That is by far, I think, from my experience, the most difficult part of the process is the auditions, the casting. And I've found that, you know, like 1/3 of the people that you say that are coming don't ever show up. And then 1/3 of the people are just inappropriate or they really didn't present themselves in the, you know, the realistic way that they should have. And then, you know, you really, you know, and it all gets narrowed down. You're not searching from like 20 people to select. You're down to 1 or 2.
Sure.
Yeah. And it's a long, involved process. A lot of advertising involved. But it's worth it because that's a critical decision between the producer and the director. You've got to have the right people. And luckily, that's been the case for the plays.
Is Boston a fertile ground for finding acting talent?
I believe it is. There's a number of different online types of connections. Stage Source is one of them that I use. And then there's, you know, there's many theatrical departments at colleges, Berkeley, Emerson, you know, there's a number of colleges, like on the North Shore, Salem State. You can draw upon them as well. So it is, but still, I ended up in some of my plays to have people. I had Miss Bon Vivant, who was in another, came from Hartford every day for a practice. Now that's pretty dedicated, you know.
But it goes back to what we were talking about when we discussed drama behind the drama. It's hard to find meaty roles, and you're really trying to step forward and advance your career, and it's difficult to do.
Right.
So, the roles that you create are probably really coveted by actors who think they're going to have the opportunity to stretch.
I would like to think so. You know, I try to make, I belong to the Dramatists Guild, and they came out with, well, some directories, and they also came out a number of different books, and one of them in particular, I can't remember the title of it, really is forces you to spend hours on character development. What would this character have for breakfast? What would this character wear on a cloudy day? I mean, I'm making this up as I go along, but you have so much information that about this character that really doesn't even make it to the script, but you know this person. And so that helps you to write the dialogue for this person because you know so much about them. So it gives you like 100 questions you have to answer about this person, which really helps.
Along those lines, Ralph, let's just back up a little bit to I'd Rather Be Lucky Than Good. Once the play became a reality, were there little things the actors added themselves that made adjustments to your original work?
Yes, there were. Now, I did not, I mean, there's choreography involved.
Sure.
I know nothing about choreography dance. Luckily, I had Jamie from Winthrop School of Performing Arts be the choreographer. So she added a whole lot. And then in terms of just, you know, my director, Harris Lefteris, she was fantastic. Just bringing out from the actors, like, what they're doing, their facial gestures, what they're doing when someone else is talking. You're always acting, no matter even if you're not speaking. Mm-hmm. So people were adding things. It was really, really funny. It really cracked me up, some of the things they added. And it all fits in.
Sure.
But the director, at that point, has the ultimate say on like what happens and what doesn't happen.
Ralph Tufo, I can't tell you how much I enjoyed this conversation. It's always fun to compare notes with you. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Pete.
I'm Pete Solomon. Thank you for joining us yourselves for this edition of On the Bookshelf. This episode of On the Bookshelf, featuring playwright Ralph Tufo, is sponsored by the Winthrop Book Depot and Cafe, located at 11 Somerset Avenue in Winthrop, Massachusetts.
There's a lot of fear in coming back to school. I wasn't sure if I could do it. I'm a 40-year-old man that walked in there to get his high school diploma. It was very hard for me, but the teachers, the counselors, they help you. One of the teachers was Miss Araceli. Miss Araceli, she gave me direction. Every single time I had a question, she'll put down whatever she's doing and she'll come over and she'll sit there with you until you get it. Thank you, Miss Araceli. I know you make a difference in people's lives because of the person and teacher you are. I wanted to be here because I wanted to thank you for helping me get a beautiful gift. 50% of getting your high school diploma is walking through those doors. The other 50% is doing the work. Getting your high school diploma, it is a life-changing experience. It really is.
Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org.